Good morning, everybody. I'm Zach Blanchard, and this is Political Brew. Joining me this morning, Democratic analyst and former state senator Cathy Breen, and former Republican state senator and political strategist Garrett Mason. Good morning.
Good morning.
We will get to all the latest on the verdict in former President Donald Trump's trial in New York in the second half. But first, there is an effort to overturn Maine's new popular vote law. The law would make all of the state's electoral votes go to the candidate who wins the national popular vote. Governor Mills allowed that bill to become law without her signature. Paperwork filed recently looks to initiate a people's veto referendum. Cathy, thousands of signatures are required here. Will we actually see this issue on the ballot, though?
Well, the first thing I want to explain is that what passed in the legislature was not going to go into effect because it's part of a national compact. So, a certain number of states have to pass that law before we do popular vote. But secondly, we'll see. I mean, I guess I don't really understand what the objection is. I mean, people who get the most votes win. That's the way I've always participated in elections. So I'll be interested to hear what the opposition is.
Garrett?
I mean, I can tell you what the opposition is. I'm kind of up in the air on the whole thing, to be honest with you. Do I think we'll see it on the ballot? Maybe. I mean, people's veto effort is a lot different than a citizens referendum effort. Citizens referendum, you have 18 months to get the signatures you need. People's veto, you have 90 days. It's a pretty long haul. So I don't know. We'll see. The jury's still out on that. They'll have a couple of mass events like fairs and stuff to do all of that work at, but it's going to be hard. As far as the situation itself, I mean, listen, 270 electoral votes to join that compact is a far way to go. So I think, I don't know if we'll ever actually see it get into place, but I think the most votes wins. I mean, that's not completely accurate. I mean, presidential elections don't always go that way. It goes by the Electoral College, not by the national popular vote. If we get to that way, I'm the kind of Republican, let's play on the field that we're on, not the one that we want to create. So let's go. I can go to Utah and get a whole bunch more votes.
Nothing to say to that, Cathy?
No, let's have at it.
All right. Now to the issue of wind power. Officials with the federal government have approved a request from the Mills administration for a lease to create a floating offshore wind array in the Gulf of Maine. It will be the country's first floating offshore wind research site, covering a 15-square-mile area in federal waters. Mills is celebrating this as a victory, but at a listening session with the feds in Portland this week, there were some mixed feelings.
We're advancing ahead of the science and the know, and talk to a lot of fishermen, specifically work on the offshore fleet, especially in the trawling division. Nobody's talked to them. I find that, it's wrong.
Now, Garrett, it seems these projects are moving ahead anyway.
Yeah, I mean, a large part of this is a push from the federal government to do more offshore wind. Thankfully, we do have the University of Maine system, who is a leader in offshore floating wind. So I'm interested to see how they're going to fare in all of this. But here's the reality. I think that there are a lot of people that are concerned about the jobs that are going to be created on these projects. We need to make sure that they're Maine people working on these projects as much as possible. I have some concerns about some of the labor requirements on that work, especially when it comes to the offshore port situation, where they're going to have to build a port to specifically do this offshore wind work. So, it remains to be seen. The bottom line is this: we need to do more of all of the above energy approaches. We need to make sure that we're lowering the cost per kilowatt hour, both in transmission and distribution and also in power delivery. So we need to do more of that. We'll see if this works out. I hope that the fishermen do get consulted as much as possible. We've heard a lot from lobstermen and fishermen who are in that area that have a lot of concerns. So I think the jury's still out. In Maine's specific proposal, the PUC has a lot of authority as to if this is going to be a viable project or not. There's a really long roadmap here, and I think there's going to be a lot of waves, if you will.
Yeah, Cathy, do you understand? Punny. Yeah. Cathy, do you understand those concerns, though, especially of the fishermen that have been there from the start?
Absolutely. I certainly do. And, we are right next to Casco Bay, and we have all those same concerns about Casco Bay. And but I think the longer view is also extremely important, is that if we don't wean ourselves off of fossil fuel, we're going to have continuing ocean acidification, continuing ocean warming, and all those fisheries are just going to get more and more and more vulnerable. So we have to work together to find some sort of compromise and some sort of way forward so that we can get off of fossil fuel and do offshore wind in the best way possible for everyone.
All right. In national news, Justice Samuel Alito has rejected calls to step aside from Supreme Court cases involving former President Donald Trump and January 6 defendants. The calls for Alito to excuse himself stem from flags that flew over Alito's homes, including an upside-down American flag. In letters to members of Congress this week, Alito said his wife was responsible for flying those flags. And Alito says the incidents don't merit him stepping aside. Cathy, is this overblown or fair criticism?
I think, I take responsibility for the flags that fly in my property, and I would have a conversation with my spouse before anything like that was publicly displayed. I think it's really convenient to blame your spouse for something. But I think that, if he were to recuse himself, then Justice Clarence would have to recuse himself because his wife has been so vocal and so outspoken and so politically active. So I think that they are doubling down on their recalcitrance and their position that they don't have to recuse themselves. And I think it does damage to the reputation of the court. I really do.
Garrett?
I think it's laughable. I think this is ridiculous. I guess I would ask the question in reverse. Should Judge Merchan recuse himself from the Trump trial because his daughter is fundraising money for Kamala Harris as we speak, as part of this sham trial that we're seeing? No, I don't think Justice Alito. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that Justice Alito should have to recuse himself at all. And I think the appeal to heaven flag specifically, which is at the center of this, is a historically significant, a culturally significant flag. In fact, it was commissioned by George Washington. And I find it interesting that the original Maine flag, I can't remember what year it is modeled exactly after that appeal to heaven flag, and we love that one here in Maine. So
some people do. I don't.
But those flags were used though in the January 6th insurrection. That's and tied to those.
The American flag was too. The American flag was too. So
But
should
the
we lower
upside
that
down
one?
flag.
The upside down.
And the upside American flag is a distress signal. A distress signal. That is.
Do you agree with that distress signal?
Yes, I do. I think the country is in severe distress. I think we are in political dysfunction in this country. I think that is of urgent distress. And I don't think that part of the U.S. flag code should be held against a justice. I think it's ridiculous.
All right, we'll leave it there. We're going to take a quick break. The Weekend Morning Report is back right after this. Good morning, everybody. I'm Zach Blanchard, and this is Political Brew. Joining me this morning, Democratic analyst and former state senator Cathy Breen, and former Republican state senator and political strategist Garrett Mason. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here. First, the headline everyone is talking about. Former President Donald Trump found guilty on all 34 counts of falsifying business records related to his efforts to cover up hush money payments ahead of the 2016 election. All this with just months until voters head to the polls. Here's what he had to say to cameras after the verdict was read.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial.
I did my job. Our job is to follow the facts and the law without fear or favor.
Garrett, we'll start with you. It seems there is no real middle ground when it comes to opinions on this, but regardless, this was historic.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's the first president to be charged with a felony, but I've been saying it on this show for months. This was a sham. You have a judge, as we alluded to in the first segment, who has a daughter who's a fundraiser for Kamala Harris, who's fundraising off of this trial. You have Alvin Bragg, who's saying he did his job. He's not doing his job. He fulfilled a campaign promise. This is what he ran for office on as a Manhattan DA. You have the witnesses in this case were laughable at best. You have a porn star who said she didn't do what she did. And you have Michael Cohen, who admitted on stand during the trial that he stole from the Trump Organization. It was brought in one of the most liberal jurisdictions in the country, where 90% of the electorate votes against Donald Trump specifically. This was a no-win proposition for the president. You also had jury instructions, which took an hour and 45 minutes to read, where the jury themselves could pick and choose which offenses, and they could add to the total. That's never been heard of before anywhere. This is going to get overturned on appeal. And I find it interesting that the sentencing for this is right before the National Convention for the Republicans. This is a sad day for justice in America. This will be remembered. And unfortunately, Pandora's box has been opened.
Cathy?
Well, I feel very differently,
Yes.
similarly passionate. To me, I am not happy about what has taken place. I think it's a sad situation, but I do believe in the rule of law. I do believe in the jury process, and that there were 12 individuals who sat in that courtroom. They were vetted extensively, as always happens in a jury trial. They were agreed to by both parties. Both parties put on their cases. And interestingly, the defendant decided not to say anything in the course of the trial, but only to come out after, well, only to do a sideshow after every day of the trial, rather than actually engage in what was going on and speak in his own defense. Lastly, I will say to the notion that the judicial system is rigged or it's somehow a sham, I agree that we have a lot to improve on in our judicial system, but it's not to benefit wealthy white men who, on average, are not the ones who are paying the price for any sort of bias or any sort of skewed situation in our courts. It's people of color, it's people with mental illness, it's people with drug addiction, and Donald Trump is actually a poster child for the type of person who usually gets off quite easily in our judicial system. So I take no pleasure in what happened, but I think that we are a country of laws, and if we are a country of laws, then everybody is subject to them.
Okay, well then I very much look forward to the prosecution of President Biden for falsified records and hiding records in his Corvette. I also look forward to the prosecution of President Obama for spying on the Trump campaign.
We're going to pause for a second. Still keeping on this topic, because we have what Republican Senator Susan Collins had to say. She released this statement saying, in part, it is fundamental to our American system of justice that the government prosecutes cases because of alleged criminal conduct, regardless of who the defendant happens to be. In this case, the opposite has happened. Cathy, Senator Collins has repeatedly said she will not support Trump's re-election. Are you surprised she took this stance?
I am. She has always seemed to me a person who also respects the rule of law. She's not a sycophant for President Trump. And so I am surprised by those comments, honestly.
But Garrett, Collins is kind of making the case that you are, that this blurs the line between the justice system and our current political system. But at the end of the day, as Cathy said, a jury made the decision here.
Yes, a very biased jury that was allowed to pick and choose which felonies they wanted to choose, and yet they cumulatively counted towards the whole. This wasn't typical jury instruction. I think Senator Collins is absolutely right. And you know, as usual, Senator Collins is the voice of reason in the room, and isn't that saying something? She's even she's even said, "I'm not voting for Donald Trump. I didn't vote for him last time." Yet she's coming out and saying this is a weaponization of justice. So, most bipartisan senator in America.
We'll see how it plays out come November. And with the presidential election just months away, one long-shot candidate's campaign was in Maine this week. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s running mate Nicole Shanahan addressed a crowd of several dozen supporters in Kittery.
This is a state with independent-minded people.
Shanahan, a lawyer and philanthropist, presented herself and Kennedy as a third option to voters disaffected with President Biden and former President Trump. Shanahan and Kennedy's platform centers on resistance to corporations and isolationism. The two have also received criticism for spreading conspiracy theories about COVID-19 and vaccines. Garrett, should either Trump or Biden be concerned about potentially votes being taken away by Kennedy?
I think so. You know, I think back, I mean, I was very young at the time, but in 1992, when Ross Perot almost won Maine, you know, and I think in a ranked choice voting scenario, that could be a very real thing. You know, there's a lot to like about RFK for president. For me personally, you know, I think his stance on COVID is I love it personally. I quite frankly wish that President Trump would take more of that stance. But, you know, at the end of the day, he's still going to get on the ballot. That's going to be a challenge, I think, for him. But yeah, I think there should be some concern. But at the end of the day, do I think RFK is going to be president? No, I don't.
Cathy, not only is he not on the ballot yet, but he won't be able to be in these scheduled televised debates with Biden and Trump. He's even filed complaints about against CNN, the Biden campaign, and the Trump campaign. Do you think he should at least be on stage for those debates?
I actually agree with Garrett that, you know.
See, we're not always that far apart.
Right. Yeah.
See?
You know, I think of him as a fringe candidate, and I do worry that he puts out so much misinformation, especially about science and vaccines, and that I consider to be misinformation. So there's already one candidate who's into conspiracy theories, who's going to be on the platform, and I don't want to see a third.
I know, it's too bad that Joe Biden falls into all those conspiracy theories.
All right, no surprise, but Senator Angus King is officially running for re-election. His campaign announced it submitted more than 5,000 signatures required to qualify for the November ballot. King, an independent, spoke to reporters this week, promising bipartisanship if he keeps his job.
I'm running basically for two reasons. One, there's still a lot of things that we got to work on. Border security, immigration reform, reform of work on healthcare, housing, those kinds of issues. And then also, we need the middle. We need people in the Senate who work together and are willing to work together.
King's opponents in the November election are independent candidate Jason Cherry, Republican Demi Kazunas, and Democrat David Costello. Kathy, do any of them stand a chance?
Absolutely not. I mean, I think, Angus has a stellar reputation. That doesn't mean he's flawless or perfect, but he has done a very good job maintaining a reputation for integrity, for problem solving, for bringing the extremes together and making sure that things get done. So
Garrett, oh, sorry.
That's okay. I think he'll win handily.
And Garrett, is this whole working together thing really possible given the current state of affairs?
Yes. I mean, I think that, people like Senator Collins and Senator King to a degree have shown that they can get stuff done in Congress. Maine's always been known for that. You look past our history, Republican, Democrat, they're always the one trying to bring people together. But let's just call a spade a spade. I mean, Senator King has been caucusing with Democrats for 12 years. So, I mean, we know that that's where he stands. And I think Cathy's right. I think it's a tough road to hoe for any of the candidates that are on the ballot. The fact that two independents qualified outside of Senator King. This is a ranked choice election, so I think we'll see how that lands. But I think he's got a path to victory.
All right, let's wrap things up with winners, losers. Kathy, we'll start with you.
I think winners are the American judicial system.
Loser?
Loser is, I don't know. I don't have one. Sorry.
Garrett?
I would say that our loser of the week is the American judicial system. I think it was a travesty of justice. I think we're going to have to remember this for a long time, and that is unfortunate. I think the winner of the week, and because it's public information, is Cathy Breen, because she got a new job, and congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, Garrett, Cathy, thanks so much. That's going to do it for this week's Political Brew. Don't forget you can watch full episodes online and on News CENTER Maine Plus. The Weekend Morning Report is back right after this.